Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second day of the international workshop on machine learning and applications on images, IoT, and wireless sensor network. Uh, just a quick overview about the workshop to Dr. Rajita over here. Ma'am, this is a workshop which is being jointly organized by University of Essex and Triple IT Lucknow. So this workshop is funded by Global Challenges Research Fund at Essex. And this is the second day of the workshop. Yesterday we had two sessions of Dr. Ashutosh Mishra. He was speaking in the morning session, and Professor Dr. Vijay Bhaskar Sebwal in the second session from MNIT Bhopal. Now, to my dear candidates, this will be the first session of the day, and by the end of this session, I'll share the link for the second session of yesterday. And to introduce Dr. Rajita over here, Dr. Rajita is an assistant professor in Motilal Nehru National Institute of Technology, Allahabad. She has widely worked in the area of image processing and machine learning and computer vision. So, ma'am is here, and without wasting any time, let us start the learning. And by the probably the last 15 or 20 minutes, we can leave for question answer and query resolution. So, ma'am, over to you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for the warm welcome. And myself, Rajita, and good morning, everyone who are all in the session. Today, I'll be discussing about the topic called machine learning and its applications in computer vision. So, in this, I'll be covering three broad areas like what is image, first of all. I don't know how many of you are working on this area. So I'll just give a brief introduction on what is image first. My lecture today will be going through these introduction topics. Like basically, first I'll discuss what is image, then how these images are relevant to our day-to-day life, and why do we need a computer vision, and now after that where all we can apply this computer vision techniques like in our day-to-day life, where this computer vision is required and why. And when we have this computer vision in our system or in our day-to-day life, like in every social gathering or in every in your college, in your traffic signals, in your wherever you go to the malls, and even daily home needs also, we are placing the computer vision technique cameras. Basically it is cameras, right? So we are placing it everywhere. So now why do we need an intelligence for those cameras? And if we apply an intelligence to any of the machine, then we need something called learning. Now that learning can be achieved with the machine learning techniques. So now what are those machine learning techniques? How can we apply them into our day-to-day lives of computer vision? And what are those various techniques in ML? Like that, I'll be discussing in today's lecture. And conclude by the end of this session, I'll be discussing some of my projects also, wherein I'm working on the computer vision by applying the machine learning techniques. So this is all about my today's lecture. So let's start with the basic introduction, that is what is image. So now generally an image, as everybody know, you have your cameras, you have your mobile phone, you have your laptop, you take your selfies, you take your photographs, you take your group photos and all. Now these are all things which we call as an image. Now there are two types of basically images, that is your photocopies, hard bound photos, and one is your photos which you have on your systems or in your mobile phones. Now these images are said to be like a digitized image. Now an image which is on your system is said to be digitized. Now this image is actually a representation of two dimensional image as a finite set of digital values called picture elements or pixels. So every image contains a pixels. Now how many pixels do do we have in an image, that purely depends on what is the capacity of your mobile phone or your software device on which through which you are capturing your image. So now, generally every pixel is typically represented as a gray level. That gray level will be in terms of black and white or gray or color. So you have three different platforms. Now, digitization implies that a digital image is an approximation of your real scene. So like every real scene we want to capture through our camera. Now that camera captures your real-time image. So for example, if you see in the current slide, there is a green grass and there is a deer sitting on it. So now we have this real-time scenario is taken into a picture and an image, and that is represented in the form of an matrix in your system. Now that matrix will contain, each cell is represented as an 1 pixel. As you can see here, this is a 1 pixel which comprises a color called a little bit, not too dark, but lightly dark. And similarly, you can observe the other pixels also in this image, which is having the green and light green, white, black, and so on. So these are all the blocks. That block is said to be a pixel in an image. Okay. So now in formal, if I talk about the formal definition of an image, it's said to be an image is a two-dimensional function where x and y are the spatial coordinates, and the amplitude of f at any pair of coordinates x and y is called the intensity of the image at that level. So simply it is actually a finite series of discrete values composed in the form of an x and y matrix. Now this x and y matrix will hold each individual amplitude value, that is, which is going to be finite, and that finite value depends on what type of image you have. So if you have a black and white, that means a complete black and white image, that intensity value is going to hold only two values, that is 0 or 1. So that means it's a 2-bit image. Similarly, when I increase the bit in an image, the image becomes a grayscale, that is the 8-bit, 16-bit or 32-bit and so on. So how many bits of images, how many bits you have in that image, that the clarity will be improving like that for every image. Similarly, the third type of image was the color image, where you have the 3 components in it, red, green and blue, RGB image. So now you have the color components in that. And similarly, if you talk about the grayscale, it is having only the 256 bits of image if it is an 8-bit image. Similarly, if it is a black and white image, you will have only 2 colors, 0 or 1. And some systems, they represent it as 0 and 255 also. So like this, you have 3 different sets of images. So the one which I'm showing on the screen is a grayscale image. Consider the following image, which is having the total number of pixels here are 2724 into 2336. So this is a 2-dimensional image, which is represented in rows and columns. So this matrix is holding a particular set of values, and how this is actually for visual, whatever we are seeing on this is a visual representation. Now, how this image is going to be stored in a system that is completely like a matrix. So let's see. The first intensity, what you can see here is like it is having f of 1, 1. That means the first row, first column, that intensity is represented as 103. If you observe here, so this is a pixel value 103, and pixel location is 1, 1. So similarly, if I observe any other random, that means that at the end here, if you observe at the end of the image, where you can see that 2724 row 2336 column is holding the intensity value as 88. Now this is actually 88 and 103, and this value of intensity will range between 0 to 255 because this image is of only 8-bit. So 8-bit, as you know, the value will be ranging only between 0 to 255. So the whole values of this image will range in these two values itself. Okay, let's talk about the intermediate. We'll see one more block here. If you see, I'm representing here with a small rectangular box, square box. Now this is comprising all these values. You can see on the left side, it is showing the rows and columns 83, 82, 82, 82, and so on till 77. So this is how an image is represented in your system, though it is in your machine. Whatever machine you have, the image will be represented in a two-dimensional matrix. Now each individual cell will hold a value called pixel. Now that pixel value will depend purely on what type of image you have, whether 2-bit, 8-bit, 4-bit, or 16-bit, or 32-bit, and so on. Now, this is a complete representation of your image in the form of a matrix. So here I have, if you observe here, the value. Now, how those values are differentiated from 0 to 255? 0 is generally noted for the black, and 255 is noted for pure image. Varied. So like this, your image gets stored in your system. Now, when I have the matrix in my hands, since and everybody's and all the participants are of actually from mathematics background, you know how to play with the matrix. So if the matrix can be skewed, the matrix can be reduced, the matrix can be largened, and so on. So generally in your mobile phones also, the simple operation what everybody performs is zooming in and zooming out. So now what is this zooming in and zooming out is generally, so like, for suppose if I have this matrix in my hand and if I'm trying to zoom in, that means I'm going into the depth of those pixels. I'm further dividing that block into further depth. And similarly, if I'm going to zoom out, then I'm reducing the dimensionality of my image, and that means I'm reducing the size of my matrix. So that how do we perform these two operations? So that is like sampling and quantization is like one of those approaches, but not purely. But you can reduce the size of the image to zoom in, and to zoom out, you can increase the size of your image through a particular block or through the entire image. So like this we can perform, and similarly you can take the negative of this image, simply taking the highest value of this image minus each individual cell. So that will give you the negative of an image. So it's simple, if you know basics of mathematics, image processing becomes easier. That's what I mean to say. Okay. Now we'll see what is digital image processing. We have come across now till the last slide. I have just explained what is digital image or digitized image. How do we store a digitized image? Now, what do you mean by processing in this? Now, suppose if I have an image like this, which I've taken now. Now this image, I'm doing something here. The second image is something quite different from the first. Now, what is the difference? Now, actually, the first one is looking into the color components. That means this image, the first image is of RGB components, but the second one is only simply the gray representation of the same image. Now, when I talk about the color images, there will be 3 matrices. Like, see, for example, here, in this example, if you see the left-sided image is a grayscale image. Now we'll have only one matrix representation for the corresponding image because it's a grayscale. But if I talk about the color image, then suppose if this is of this left-sided image is of color, then we have 3 components, as you know. For every color formation, you need 3 colors. The combination of 3 colors R, G, and B. Now, how much proportion you have, whichever color is dominating, that color representation will be shown on the pixel. Now, that means in the system, we'll have 3 matrices, 3 different matrices. One matrix is for R, one matrix is for G, and one matrix is for B. Now, these 3 matrices will hold different intensity values. Now, combining the corresponding intensity values will form an RGB image. So that means in terms of space, if I talk about, for grayscale image, if the size of an image is m cross n, the memory will be taken as m cross n for grayscale image. Same for the binary image. But if I talk about the color image, the memory requirement for a color image is m cross n into 3. So that means you need 3 matrices. So the space required for an color image is m cross n into 3. So that is the total space required in your system. So now processing always on the color images is not possible because you have 3 different three different matrices, and applying any image processing technique on directly on color images, it will be a complicated because you need to process on all the 3 matrices. So that's why usually in most of the digital image processing techniques, we convert your color image into grayscale, like the one I'm showing here. So that means I'm reducing the dimensionality of m cross n into 3 to m cross n, which is a grayscale representation. Now I'm converting the total dimensionality to m cross n so that whatever algorithm I'll apply on this will be same as the first one, but the time complexity gets reduced. So that's what 90% of image processing techniques, they use grayscale images rather than the color images. Okay. Now, once we had the grayscale image, there will be some other techniques also, like suppose if I want to identify what type of an object is there on this image. Now then I need to further analyze on this. I have converted this into some other form. If you look into, okay, let's see all of them, then you'll understand better. So let's observe what is happening in all these images. Now first we had a color image, then we had a grayscale image. Now the third one is actually an intensity reduced image. That means I have a grayscale, but further I have reduced my intensities. So what happened in the third image is, in the second image, I had the color intensities from 0 to 255. Now I have reduced this intensities to 0 to 255, but in between some of the intensities I have removed. So then my image becomes as in shown in the third image. Similarly, sometimes I need to blur an image, or you might be seeing sometimes of blurs in when you take your photographs on your mobile phone, some images are blurred. Now that will be something similar to this, the fourth image on the screen, the first row, fourth image. Now like this, and similarly, the last one here, this image is actually the sharpened image, you can say, in terms of imaging. Now what is sharpened image is highlighting the corners of an image with the original image. I'm taking the actual image, but I'm highlighting only the corners of that image. So this can be used to identify the shape of the object and to identify the object detection. Most of the object detection applications, you can use this particular technique as an pre-processing stage to identify the shape of an object. Similarly, you can see here one more image, which is on the second row, first image. It shows only the edges, nothing else. Remaining entire portion of the image is dark except the edges. That means I'm processing only the edges of this image and entire other remaining thing has been lost. So I need this type of images also for most of my applications, like character recognition and similarly number plate recognition and so on. Suppose if I want to identify, differentiate the car from an bus, then also the shape plays a vital role. A car shape is different from a bus. So there also the edge detection plays a vital important role. So where you can apply the edge detection operations and find the only edges and differentiate your objects. So that is one way. And similarly, this the last one, this processing technique is said to be a thresholding. That means I have thresholded my image into 2 categories, black and white. If you observe the second image in the second row, it's completely holding only 2 intensities, which are black and white. No other color is mentioned here. That means I'm dividing the entire image into 2. Now this thresholding value, that means what happens here exactly is, actually in grayscale image, I have the intensities as, so in the first row, second image, the grayscale image, I have the intensities as 0 to 255 in total. But in thresholding, what we do, I'll put a condition like, if the intensity value is less than 150, take it as 0. If it is greater than 150, take it as 1. So that means I'm taking all the values into only 2 dimensions, that is 0 and 1. So that is what called as an thresholding. Now this thresholding can be either binary threshold, that means binary threshold in the sense I'm taking only 0 and 1 or 0 and 255. That's it. I can do a multi-layer thresholding also in image processing, like 0 to 50, I'll take one intensity, 50 to 100, I'll take one more intensity, and 50 to 200, I'll take another intensity, like that. So like this, I can do multi-level thresholding or single binary level thresholding. There are 2 types of thresholdings. So in general, most of the applications, they target on a specific object. Like if I'm talking about an application of vehicle number plate detection, I just have to concentrate only on the number plate. Remaining entire thing is irrelevant for me in that application. So I'll go only for rectangular object detection, and then I'll simply suppress everything. Remaining thing is not at all important for me. So then I can apply the thresholding to clearly take a rectangular box. Wherever the rectangular box is detected, crop it, and the remaining entire thing can be placed as an 0. So this type of pre-processing technique is said to be an thresholding. Similarly, this one is actually your RGB in color. The last image, which is on the second row, which talks about your CMY model. RGB and CMY are 2 different models which are in the color spectrum, and generally RGB models are used in almost of all your cameras where you take the photographs, and CMY model is used for printing machines. All the printing machines, they use the CMY model. Okay, so this is all about the basic processings, or you can say the basic pre-processing stages where we use in our real-time image processing applications. Now, when I do this image processing, I need to be clear with the 2 simple terms called as sampling and quantization. See, I'm just discussing about the basics of image processing so that you can relate these pre-processing stages, how they are relevant, and why we need these basic pre-processing stages to apply in our computer vision applications. So if you don't understand this, we cannot relate our real-time applications, actually, how these can be applied in your real-time applications. So that's why I'm discussing a basic introduction on why this image pre-processing stages are required in real-time applications. Okay, now we talk about the 2 things, sampling and quantization. Now, sampling relates to the term of coordinates, and quantization is related to intensity values. That means if I have an image of M cross N, if I'm reducing the size of the image, or if I'm enlarging the size of the image, that is M cross N, if I'm reducing or enlarging, that is said to be an sampling. And similarly, if I'm looking at the intensities, I'm not altering the size of the image M cross N, but the same M cross N image, I'm trying to change the intensity values for 1-bit image, 2-bit image, 4-bit image, 8-bit image, 16-bit, and so on. Now that is related to quantization. So this is what about your sampling and quantization. Now we'll see certain examples on sampling. Now the screen which I'm sharing currently talks about sampling. Now you can observe the same image which we have seen from the right from the start, the same images is taken, and the total size of this image is 1024, that is M cross N total. So total its size is 1024. Now I'm reducing its size into half. So that is 512, that is M by 2 into N by 2. If the size of this original image is M cross N, I'm taking M by 2 into N by 2. So which is leading to 512. Now, if I further reduce the size of that image, it is becoming 256, and further reduced half 128, and further reduced 64, and further reduced 632, and so on. So like this, I'm not changing, and do observe here one thing, I'm not changing the pixel intensities. That means in the whole, all these images, the bit image is the same, that is 8-bit image. That means all intensities are in the between 0 to 255. But image size has been reduced, not the intensity clarity. So that is why, since the intensity clarity is not at all altered, even in the first image, which is of size 1024, and in the image of 10128, both of them you are visible to we see the image clearly. You can identify at least what type of image is there. So this is what called as an sampling. Now let's see what is okay, you can observe here what happens exactly in the system or in the visual point of view. In the second image, we have here the image as 1024 reduced to 5112, and the third image is reduced to 256, 128, 64, and 32. Now you can observe the image which is shown in 1024 is much clearer to every human eye, and the image which is on the second row, last one, which is of having only the size as 32, this image is completely blurry. We cannot identify what type of image is there in that. That is because we have completely reduced the intensities of our image, total number of intensities. So now when I try to reduce the total number of intensities, my image identification will become lost. So that means doing a sampling is good. That means, suppose like in most of the real-time applications, what we do is we take the real-time image, and since the real-time image, or especially when I talk about medical imaging, now medical images are of very high dimension. That means the size is very high in medical images. Now we cannot completely work on directly on as original image. We try to reduce its size. That means we try to resize the images, which we actually do the sampling. Now when I do the sampling also, I need to look into to which level I need to do the sampling. I cannot do this level of sampling till 32 as it's shown in the current screen. Now if I do oversampling also, the image object is not clear. Now if I do undersampling also, the image will be too large and the time complexity will be very high. So the sampling should be moderate according to the object on which you are focusing in real-time application. Whatever application you are focusing on, based on that you need to choose a particular sampling level. You can now do over or under sampling. Okay. Now comes the quantization. Now quantization talks about the pixel intensities. So let's see here in the first image you have 8-bit image. Now the same image is represented with an 7-bit image in the second row, first row, second column. Now again the same image is represented with 6-bit, 5-bit, 4-bit, 3-bit, 2-bit, and 1-bit. Now you can observe 1-bit, actually the one which I'm already first from the start of the lecture I was talking about, the black and white image. Now black and white image is actually an binary image. You have only two intensities, 0 and black. So that is your 1-bit image. Now when I talk about 2-bit image, you have 4 colors in that. So that's why the image is having only this representation. Now I'm further increasing the intensity. So I'm coming from the reverse direction. 1-bit holding only 2 colors, 2-bit holding 2 power 2 colors, 3-bit 2 power 3, 2 power 4, 2 power 5, 2 power 6, 2 power 7, 2 power 8. Now as I increase the bits, the image has become much clear. So that means how many number of bits you have in your image, that gives the better quality for your visualization. So that's why right now on your mobile phones or in your current the laptops, whatever you buy, it is actually a 16-bit or 32-bit. So your images are much clear in comparison to the older devices. So this is what a bit represents on an image. So more the bits, more the clarity of an image. Okay. Now you need to know one more thing here, resolution. Now the quantization is actually relevant to resolution of an image. Now what is a resolution is, image resolution is often considered equivalent to pixel count in a digital image processing. Now quantization, it's somewhat related to quantization, I can say. Now quantization is actually, I said, how many bits you have rather than changing the size of the image. I see in all the images which I'm showing on the current screen, The size of the image is same, only the bits are different. That means the pixel intensities are represented in different bits, 2-bit, 3-bit, 4-bit, 6-bit, 7-bit, 8-bit, and so on. Like, that's what called as an resolution. Now you can observe here in this current slide, which I'm sharing on the screen, you have a 1 cross 1 pixel, 2 cross 2, so on up, 100 cross 100. So now whatever the larger the image matrix, the better quality of your object, whatever you are focusing on. Now that is what called as a resolution. Now how much, generally you talk about megapixel. My camera is of 8 megapixel and so on, 16 megapixel camera and so on. Now what is this megapixel? How do we calculate this in real time? How do we calculate the megapixel, and how do we identify which megapixel camera is best for taking your photographs? Now this is simply calculated, very simple formula, but most of us doesn't know. It's simply thing like number of columns in that image into number of rows by 1 million will give you how many megapixels does this image occupy, or that camera can take off at the max. So it is columns into rows by 1 million. So suppose, let's say we have a dimension of an image as 2500 number of rows into 3192 number of columns. Now this is a rows and columns, so you need to just multiply these two. So 2500 into 3192, so we got these many number of bytes, which is 7982350 bytes. Now this bytes divided by 1 million, so we got around the value to be 7.9, so which is actually a 8 megapixel approximately. So that means this image or this device is taking the photographs of 8 megapixel. So like this, you can identify your own mobile phones also, your laptops also, like how many megabits and why it is taking that many megapixels, and how do we calculate those megapixels. It's very simple formula, rows into columns by 1 million will give you the image resolution. Okay. Now, one more thing which you need to know in basics of part of image processing is what is an aspect ratio. Now, aspect ratio is, the screens are different, the size of the screens are different for everyone. I have a phone of Nokia, so the size of the different 5-inch, 7-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch, and so on. But the image what we see on all those devices, if I'm sharing the same photograph on all the images, which is going to look like this, which is I'm showing on the current screen. Now it is 19 cross 9. So that means this is this resolution is taking 19 rows and 19 columns. 19 rows and 19 columns, 19 rows and 19 columns, 10 cross 5. Now these all screens are taking different aspect ratios. Now what is exactly the aspect ratio is? An aspect ratio is a ratio between width of the image and height of an image. So width of the image and height of the it is generally represented as m:n. So see, aspect ratio you can simply observe on your phone also. If I'm looking at my camera in vertical direction, the screen would look like this. And if I'm taking it as an horizontal, I can see this as the one which is shown on the second one. So like this, you can have multiple views of your screen. The image is going to be the same, but how much dimension you are trying to represent that image, that is actually called as an aspect ratio. Okay. Now, as a whole, I just told you about what all the basics of image processing. Now, this image processing basic thing is actually the digital image processing mainly focuses on improvement of pictorial information. That means the image is not clear when I captured it, so I need to improve its quality. That is one thing. And if the image is captured as noisy while I'm taking the photograph, so you need to remove the noise. Especially if you talk about underground water images, if you talk about the water GIS, geographic systems, and underwater images, those images are actually like when the camera which is taken the photographs, those images are little bit dull. That means the color intensities are not that appropriate, and some images might be blurry also. So once they are captured in my system or in the system wherever they are getting processed for analysis, those images quality needs to be improved for further analysis. So that is what actually the image processing does. And the second application where image processing is applied is the image processing is applied for storing and transmission. That means, as I said just now, the medical images are actually generally takes huge amount of space. Now, when I try to store them on my system, and if I have some thousands of medical images to be processed for identifying the tumor or identifying the cracks or identifying the disease or whatever types of disease, I need to have some around 5,000 images or 10,000 images and even more if my system needs to be accurate. Now this 10,000 images needs to be stored on my system. Now storing those many number of images on my system will be tedious because my capacity is very less. My system storage capacity is very less. Now what do I do? Now in that cases, what we do is we represent our medical image with slight modification. We have some representation techniques also. Now we transform an original color medical image into some other domain through singular value decomposition. I don't know how many of you have heard about it, but that is one of the ways to convert your actual image into some another representation where we are not losing actual content of your image, actual major content, important content of your image, but you are storing the main important content in a different representation form so that your image is stored without any loss in it. So that is one type of storage. Generally, the term used here is called as an compression or alternate representation also you can say. So another example where we need this image transformation is your facial gesture recognition, whether you are smiling, whether you are laughing, are you crying, and so on. These are certain applications on which, or based on your mood of your current mood, your system should search accordingly the music system and play for you. So like this, suppose if I'm laughing, I should get all the musics which are encourage my mood. Similarly, when I am crying, I suppose if I'm crying in front of my camera and it detects that I'm crying, and it should have some intelligence in my software so that it tries to change my mood, whatever songs which are interested for me, it tries to play them, recognizing that I'm in a sad mood. So there are such systems already in computer vision which detects the mood of a person and plays the corresponding audio for them to change the mood of that person. So like that, we need some image processing techniques both for improving the quality, one thing, and another one is for storing. That means reduce the size of your image and store in your system. Another one is you're changing the representation of your images. So all these three are very, very much important in almost all applications of wherever the vision is relevant for. Now, all these things, whatever I've told you, like image enhancement and so on, all this comes under image processing techniques. Now, once the image is processed, you need to do the second step, which is called as analysis. Let's go. Okay, first let's see what is the image processing stages are. Now, generally, image processing stages are these, which I'm showing on the screen. Image acquisition, we acquire the image. Now, once the image is acquired, we do image enhancement. For example, I have the image acquired. In the current screen, you can see I have this image, and this is not clear for me. So I'm improving its quality, enhancing its quality. Now, this enhancement is this process is called as an image enhancement. There are lots of techniques for doing the image enhancement. So similarly, so there are basically two types of image enhancement techniques: low pass filters and high pass filters in frequency domain and spatial domain. So now you can use any of these algorithms. There are lots of algorithms in that: power transform, gamma correction, and so on. And you can use any of them and you can apply this image enhancement. Now, once the image is clear enough for me, Then I go for image restoration, the one restoration in the sense that if I have any noise in my image, I try to reduce it. Like, you might have observed, I don't know how many of you have used, if you used any of your old phones, or if you have any of your old cameras at your home, just try to take the photographs, and sometimes there will be some spots. When I take the photograph, there will be certain spots when I capture the image. Now that is actually the electronic noise induced into your image when I'm clicking on it, any on the particular natural scene. Now this electronic noise is induced because of the electronic device, which is corrupted due to some electronic issue in your device. But the image which is coming up, which is actually a noisy, now we apply certain image processing techniques on it to reduce those noises in that image. Now that particular, there are huge number of algorithms again in that noise reduction. Now that process is said to be as image restoration. Now, for after that, you have one more thing called as simple example. You can see here for image restoration. I have an image which is having an electronic noise. In the current slide, you can see the second bottom screen. I have an image of satellite image taken, and there is something overlapping on this entire image. Horizontal lines and vertical lines overlapped. Now, this is actually a periodic noise which is induced on your original image. Now, this noise has been removed from my image, and the image has become clear as it's shown in the second one. So this is called as an image restoration. Agar if I have to do any of the processing on the images needs to be clear. So this image enhancement, image restoration, this needs to be applied as a pre-processing stage for any image wherever respective problem is encountered. Then we get a better qualified image, and then we go for the next processing stages. Now the next processing stages is morphological processing, you can say. Now in morphological processing, what we do is, suppose I have an image like a thumb impression. Now thumb impression, whenever I press, it's not always that if I have to detect or if I have to open my machine to my thumb, even in your mobile phones, you have the same opportunity. So if I have to open my machine through the thumb, then it should scan the complete lines on my thumb clearly and efficiently so that it detects that that thumb impression is of mine, and the system gets opened exactly. Now, if anybody else opens it, it should not open. That is fine. Most of the software devices that does it. Now, how do we do that? That means, do I press with the same pressure every time whenever I give my thumb impression? Not always. It depends on how pressure you are giving. Now, if I'm giving the over pressure while I'm giving the thumb impression, the lines will be dark. As you can see here, the lines will be very thick, and some of the lines might go overlapped. And similarly, if I'm pressing with very low pressure, then the lines will not be clear at all. That means there will be a more number of cracks in this image, in that thumb, whatever I have scanned. Now, like this, again, I'll have a different sets of images at every single press. Now, how do my machine should recognize that it's my thumb itself? Now, I need to do some pre-processing before matching that scanned image at the runtime with my data set, which is having my original thumb impression. Now you need to do here, the lines which are cracked, you need to merge. The lines which are overlapped, you need to differentiate. Now for that, we apply the one important techniques of image processing called as morphological processing. Now which we have, wherein we have the operators like erosion, dilation, and so on. So with them, we apply the merging and enlarging, both the things. We apply the morphological processing, and we try to remove all the noises and disturbances which is encountering a problem for perfect match. Now, like this, we do the some basic pre-processing stages before doing it, before applying my original match with my data set. Similarly, another area or another pre-processing stage is image segmentation. So now in image segmentation, you can see here I have the image of an elephant, which is having which is taken in an some ground. Now here I'm differentiating that where is the grass, where are the trees, and what type of animal do I have? Is it a single elephant or multiple elephants? Or is the one which have, what is the type of animal also? You can say, is it a tiger, is it a lion, or is it an elephant? Everything you need to first of all segment that animal from that entire image. That means you need to separate my target object from the whole image. Now if I see there are three different objects in this particular image: animal, trees and grass and sky. So you have four objects. I'm not interested. If my application is to find out what type of animal is there in this particular image, then I'm little interested with the other three segments. So I'll suppress sky, I'll suppress trees, I'll suppress grass, and I'll concentrate only on this animal portion. So that actually depends on what type of region of interest are you looking for. Now that separation is said to be an image segmentation. You are going to do some segmentation to take your region of interest. Now there are again vast number of approaches to do this image segmentation in real-time applications. Okay, now another key processing stage is image representation, as I was talking about. So I have an object like this, which is shown in the first row, first image. Here I have taken lot number of dots, edges, and here we have taken only a particular set of dots. And here again we have taken the direction. If you observe clearly, here you can see the arrow indication. That means the edges towards the up, edges towards the right, edges towards the left, and so on. And like this, you can have multiple ways of representation, representing your object in your system. You can represent the same thing in a smaller box or larger box, and so on. So like this, you can represent in a multiple representation forms. And another one where we have a key stages is object detection. Now, object detection is actually needs segmentation first of all. Suppose if I have to detect an object, first of all, I need to know what is my region of interest. Now, to know the region of interest, first you need to target on your particular object. Now, the targeting, that is actually your image, what object you want to target on. So like this, I can have an object detection. So I have here three segmentations. One is the dog, cat, and background. So dog, cat, and background. I have three different objects. So I'm categorizing the first one as a dog, and the second one is as a cat, and the background as an background. So like this, you can detect the objects. Now another one is your compression, as I said. Original image, which is having 2.1 megapixels, and this the same image has been compressed without losing its quality, which is having only 308 kilobytes of space. Similarly, you have a damaged image. I have an old photograph which is having lots of cracks, and I'm restoring that image with a perfect fixing those cracks. That means I take the average of the neighboring pixels, and I'll take the I'll fix that image as an restored image, removing the unwanted pixels from that image. So this is the restored image, actually we call. So like this, we'll have a different sets of applications, and we call all of these as an pre-processing stages, or you can say simply the computer vision is actually categorized into three. One is as I shown in the screen, from low level to high level. The low level processing is called as an image processing. So what all, if anybody has studied DIP, digital image processing by Gonzalez, that complete textbook talks about the pre-processing techniques, image pre-processing techniques as a whole. How do we enhance the image? How do we remove the noise? How do we restore? How do we remove the blur? How do we compress the image? How do we extract the edges? And so on. Now, like this, entire thing is said to be an pre-processing. That means the input for image processing is an image. Now, image processing output is also an image. That means you are improving the quality, or you are removing the noise, you are restoring. Input is image, output is better qualified image. That is your image processing does. Now that means, suppose if I look into one particular application, suppose I have to detect a dog, animal. I have a multiple animals images with me. I have to detect how many dogs or how many dog images do I have in those complete data set. If I talk about, first of all the images are not taken from the same camera, and same all the cameras doesn't have the same resolution, and similarly lightness, brightness, everything is not same for all sets of images. So first I need to make all those images which are having the illumination problem, which are having the blurring problem, which are having the noise problem. All these images first needs to be pre-processed, which we say as image enhancement or noise reduction. Now, once I apply this low level enhancement, my image is clear. All those animal images are clear enough. That means objects are clear. Now I need to apply the segmentation or image registration or matching. That is what called as an image analysis. That means I have the animals, objects, images of animal like dog, cat, crow, and so on. Now in this, I need to look only for the images which are having the dogs and irrelevant for the other. Now, how do I differentiate the animal of dog with the cat? First of all, I need to focus on region of interest. Now, I need to first of all get the segmented portions of both the images. That is done through the image analysis. So we have again lots of techniques. If anybody interested, we can look into in further lecture if any time permits. Now we have that we need to segment those images. Now, once we get the segmented regions, then we try to match them with our data set, dog data set, cat data set, and crow data set, and so on. Now, whichever data set it is matching the most, there we categorize that given image is a dog, or given image is a cat, or given image is an crow. So now how do we do this matching? This is the place where we need machine learning. So till this point, till analysis, till segmentation, we don't need a learning at all, because we are not doing any matching at all. But when you try to do matching, you need to have a learning technique, because it has to learn. Dog has different features, cat has different features, crow has different features. Now, what are these features? How do we represent these features? And how do we make our machine to learn these features and categorize that given images of dog, or given images of cat, or given images of crow, and so on. So this is what called as an machine learning, which is applied at the matching stage. Now, when I say the high level, the complete high level is actually said to be an object detection, recognition, shape analysis, tracking, and so on. So all the computer vision related, like traffic signals, we have lots of traffic signals. We need to identify the accident. We need to identify the people. Is it a dense area? Is it a sparse area? And automating the traffic signal lights and so on based on the density of the traffic. If it is a dense traffic density is low, then the signal light should be generally red. If the density of that line is high, then it should be green. That means that particular line should be given the first priority to go with to clear the traffic. So now these are some of the computer vision applications. Similarly, another one set of application is you're detecting a theft in a particular area, or detecting a bomb in a particular region, and so on. So there are vast set of applications where the computer vision is required, where we need the basic two inbuilt stages, we can say image processing and image analysis. Without image processing and image analysis, computer vision is nowhere, because these two stages acts as a building blocks for computer vision applications. So this is a history about image processing and so on. Now from now we'll see what is vision, and what all vision applications do we have, and so on. We'll further proceed with the vision. Now, what is vision? Now, vision is said to be something which we are looking through our eye. I'm looking onto right now, I'm looking onto my screen and I am able to read it. I have a sentence called vision is a process of discovering what is present in the world and where it is by looking. So I'm able to seize it, right? So this is what called as a general vision. Now, how my eye is detecting that the alphabet is W, the alphabet is V, the alphabet is question mark, or there is a square box on this written something inside which is E, Y, E, and E, Y, E together, my brain is able to identify that it is an word called I. Now, what is happening exactly here? That means whenever my eye is looking onto a particular word or character, that character is given as an impression to my brain. Now my brain does some processing. Now that processing, because I already been processed to recognize this character V, either it is a small letter, capital letter, cursive writing letter, whatever it is, my brain is actually tuned to recognize this character V. How we have tuned? Right from my schooling, preschool, school, LKG, UKG, first class, everything, my brain has been tuned to identify this character V as in V and recognize that VISION as in vision. Now, this is what actually my brain is already tuned for or learned for. So this is what actually comes into the learning technique. So something, any machine, any device needs to be learned on the huge sets of data sets, because I've been learning from my entire childhood for everybody, not only for me. First 3 years is right from in your schooling. First 3 years are basically meant for recognizing the characters and the words. You spell it out, right? So I'm making my machine, my brain to learn those characters, right? That is what you need to do with your machine also. Computer vision is simply, see, as a human, I can see through my eye. When I talk about computer vision, I need a device to look into. So now the thing comes is here, digitized eye. You can say digitized eye. I have a camera which is acting like an eye. That's why we call it an digitized eye. Now this digitized eye looks into some scene, whichever is in front of it, and it tries to identify is either the human is moving, either the vehicle is moving, either there is an accident, or whether there is an bomb blast, or is there any smoke, is there any fire, and so on. So this machine, which we call as a digitized eye, should be capable enough, or it should be having an intelligence to recognize the smoke on the scene area, to recognize a bomb blast, to recognize a traffic accident, to recognize a human, to recognize a theft, and so on. So that means this device should, like our brain, this device, which is actually a camera placed on your respective scenario, wherever it is placed, this needs to be trained with lots of data set. Now, this is what called as an learning process. Now, herein we come across with the machine learning techniques. So we need to know how to make the machine learn. Now, machine learning, it's what actually said to be making your machine to learn based on the existing knowledge and take a decision on the current scenario wherever it is being placed. So that is what a computer vision stands for. Now we need an intelligence because you need to have an accurate systems. Okay. Now why computer vision? As we can say, instead of playing a human always, it is better to place the cameras. Every traffic signal, since every angle you cannot cover with a human eye, so you need traffic lights and traffic signals. Cameras needs to be placed there. So actually it is for securing your system, securing your environment, securing your home, and so on. For every purpose you need a computer vision. So, and most importantly, looking for a person always watching on the crime scene, it's not possible. So you need a particular camera or with a device which can capture the complete scenario for during the entire period of time. So that's why we place a computer cameras basically in different locations, and we try to look into the scenarios, what is happening in that particular location. Okay. Now this is the about computer vision. Now, what type of applications say, so let's say, for example, I just want to identify, does the image I contain an image of a person? So basically, in general, whenever you take your, in some of the, most of the systems, when you try to log in and when you try to give your password also, then also it will say that, are you a machine or an human? It will ask for, click all the rectangular boxes wherever you have a car, wherever you have a machine. So these are the things which to identify that the person is live person in that, in front of the machine, not a robot or something. So like this, you have some applications like you need to identify which all images are having the human. So if I look into these all sets of images, the first one is having a human, the second is also having a human, and third, fourth, and fifth, and sixth, all of them are having a human in this. These are said to be an positive samples, where you have an human in that. And the ones images where you don't have an human, where we call as an negative samples. So we don't have any human in these sets of images. So like this, the machine, whichever you are going to train, should have the positive samples as well as the negative samples, so that the accuracy will be perfect. So for every machine, you need to know if my machine is having only the target to detect whether the human is present or not in the given image, then I need to train my machine with the positive samples as well as with the negative samples. Then only it can differentiate that the given image is having a human or not a human. So in general, in all the applications, this positive samples and negative samples, they call it as an test training phase and testing phase. And in training and testing phases, you have both the samples, now positive and negative. So like this, you need to have both the things for your machine. Okay. Now, who has invented this computer vision? It is Mark Whelan. He has proposed a particular, till 2000 also, there were not perfect machines of computer vision invented, intelligent devices actually. Till 2000 also, they were not there. So the main idea came from in 1966. This Marvin has said his one of your undergraduate students to spend his summer by creating a camera which can describe what is going on in front of that camera, right? So it was an invention with him, started with him with a small project, and that project was given for an undergraduate student. So like that, the research has started in this until from in 1996 he's thought of that idea, and by 2000 there are huge sets of such applications which we call as HCI currently, how human computer interaction, right? So like this, from 1996 to 2000, there were the lots of stages. They applied artificial neural networks and so on, and with the mathematical background, everything. Till 2000, they started. From 2000, actual device has come into the market, and from then there are most vast sets of devices with an intelligence inbuilt in it. Okay. So now current research applications where all we have a computer vision is, one is like your optical character recognition. So you have lots of characters, you need to recognize them one by one. So this is all current research application. This is having, see, OCR character recognition has been in research till I think around from before 1996 only. You have lots of algorithms to identify them, but even still, for Indian number plate recognition, there is no best or accurate character recognition software. Optical character recognition is a part of your number plate recognition also, you can use in that. So but still now, because in Indian people, they try to write the number plate in different styles, and characters are different, the colors are different, and so on. So still there is no perfect machine to recognize such number plates perfectly for Indian scenario. So there could be a huge research scope in this particular area also for Indian character recognition characters, either your written characters or hard bounded characters and so on. There is a still wide scope. Okay, another one is your face detection. Many digital cameras, most of your digital cameras which are coming currently, they try to show you the face tag. If you observe even in your mobile phones, it shows the face tag, like which is on the current screen. Now, how this face is detected? Through image processing technique. Okay. Now, once this is detected, there is one more advanced topic on this, smile detection. So once you are smiling, then only your photographs is captured. Otherwise, the photo is not captured. Most of the mobile phones, you have the similar app on your mobile phones. So if you are smiling, detects the smile and takes the clicks on the photograph. So like this, you can have a smile detection softwares, face detection softwares, and you have another application of computer vision is object recognition. Now, object recognition is widely applied in almost all the applications. Like in supermarkets, you try to use the what all objects you are taking into the from the market and so on. Similarly, the object recognition is also applied in car detection, vehicle detection, categorizing the type of vehicle. That is also one of the object detection, and human detection, and crowded region detection, and so on. So like that, you have multiple applications of object detection also. Now, one more thing you can see, this lady is very, very famous. I guess most of you know about her also, Afghani girl. So this girl has been identified with, there was a one photograph taken earlier by a photographer, and later the same photograph, the same lady photograph has been taken at later point of time, and through her iris detection, that it has been found that both the girls are the same. So the face features have changed completely, and the color of the lady has been changed, but the iris pattern is the same for both the photographs. So like this, through the iris pattern, this girl has been identified, and it's very popular. If you just type on Google, you'll get to know the links also of Afghan girl. So most of you already know, I guess. So this is one sort of application where we need computer vision techniques and the applications of computer vision which are applied in real time actually. So this is one sort. And another one where we need image processing or computer vision, where all we need is, one thing is like your, as I was discussing about morphological processing, there I discussed about your thumb recognition. So now most of my machines are not looking for to enter the password. They ask for either your face scan, or through your face detection, or through your fingerprint. So these are the two things most of the people follow in most of the machines. So that means if you have to have a photo scan, you need a computer vision. If you need to have a thumb scan, then also your system should be well enough with the computer vision techniques, right? So this is one more area where you can go through, and it's widely applied in most of the devices, but you can work on this particular sector also. Now, object detection, and you can say, like I have one photograph with me, and I don't know that photograph is taken from where, or that photograph belongs to which city or which location, and so on. Now, this can be searched quite better way. In Google, you have one thing called as a Google search. Most of you do a Google search on it. Now, Google search has multiple types of searching techniques. One is your text-based search. Another one is your image-based search. Now, in the image-based search, in the text-based search, you simply type something like rows, you'll get all the rows information. If I talk about image processing, I'll get all the relevant information of image processing. Now, in Google image search, there are two ways to search again. I can type a text. Okay, I can type a text and I'll get the relevant information, or else I can give an image itself as an input. That means I'm having a photograph with me, but I don't know where the photograph has been taken, to which city it belongs to, which state it belongs to, and so on. Then I can take that photograph and simply drag and drop into Google image search. Simply upload that image into that, and it will try to identify which is the most similar image for that. Now, if there exists any such history about that image, you will get all the information relevant to that in the Google search. Now, this type of research is called as content-based image retrieval. Content-based image retrieval. In short, you can say CBIR. Now, here also you need to do a lots of learning, because the given image should be matched with the all the images of your data set. So you need to have some features extracted from that image. Now those features needs to be matched with all the features, every image features in my data set. Now, how do I match those features? Because I have some millions of image in my data set, and I have a one query image which I'm taking from my photograph. Now this millions of images for features, like you have some millions of images, you have millions of features. Now all these millions of features needs to be matched with your current query image features. Now this again needs a lots of complicated comparison techniques. Comparison. Now this comparison can be made easy by machine learning techniques. That means machine learning techniques can be used to reduce this complexity. Now, machine learning techniques are like, there are many such techniques like support vector machines, PCA, and so on. So like this neural networks, artificial neural networks, decision tree, and so on. There are multiple machine learning techniques where we can apply here. And there is one more important thing. I have millions of features. Now these millions of features may, all the millions of features or may not be important for me for matching. So I need to reduce those millions of features into some thousands of features, because all of them might not be important for my application. Now reducing the dimensionality or reducing the number of features, and that means actually we are not reducing, we are extracting only the important features from the whole set of millions of features. Now this reduction sample or the process of reducing the whole features to some important features, down sampling, this process is said to be feature reduction. Features reduction. Now there are multiple algorithms to do this, again the feature reduction in machine learning technique. Now you can apply any of such machine learning technique to reduce these features, and now we process only on the reduced features, not on all the features, so that my time gets reduced and my efficiency gets improved. So like this we have then lots of techniques in machine learning. Okay, now this is one more application where we have a computer vision, special effects, like all the uh, English movies, 80% of English movies are based on these special effects only. So like this one, and special effects of all the motion based pictures and so on. So here also you need an machine learning and some of the computer vision applications. Okay. Now, one more one is the sports, where most of the men's are interested in. So if there is any clatchy point, or there is any wicket space or something, you need to zoom into that particular location, and you need to identify what exactly happened in that particular scene. So therein we need again a computer vision techniques. And another smart and currently it's a booming area of computer vision, you can say smart cars, smart automated cars also you can say. So this is one beautiful application in computer vision. You can, most of the people who are in this particular presentation, you can try a little bit on this particular area also, where you're trying to automate your car, the self-driving cars, what you call generally. Now self-driving cars for other countries it might be easy, because the lanes are very clear, the population is less, and the roads are very broad, and everybody follows the rule and so on. So your automated systems might work well in those scenarios. But if I talk about the same vehicle in Indian scenario, again there is an lots of challenges. So all of them you need to look into in terms of Indian scenario, because there is no control here on traffic, there is no control on the animals on the road, and there are many things in Indian. So you can think on this particular area also if anybody is interested in smart cars or automated car systems. So you can go through this one set of application, and here exactly now what is you might say, some people might say, sir ma'am, there will be a sensors to detect the left side, right side, and so on. What is the camera point of view? For all of them, I just want to tell you, camera is very important in automating cars. Like you have a camera already, most of the cars which are currently coming up, they have a front camera and a back camera. So in order to reduce the traffic accidents and so on. So you have a camera. If you observe this particular vehicle on the screen, there is a camera towards the left, a camera towards the right, and a camera on the top of the vehicle to look into the what is happening in the front, and there is a camera at the back, right? So like this, we have covered all the 4 directions for the vehicle through camera. Now camera doesn't have an intelligence. Simple camera placing doesn't have an intelligence. So you need to provide an intelligence through some application to these devices. Now you need to capture these videos which is happening in all the surroundings of the vehicle, and you need to design some intelligent system to follow the path. Does it has to take a left path or it has to take a right path? Is the line completely clear so that it can improve the speed? And or is it a crowded area currently so that I can reduce my speed? Like this, all these scenarios should be considered into the developing of an automated car. Now, looking into this, ML is very, very important because it has to trace about all the 4 directions, and it has to decide where is the line path, is it a crowded, it is a non-crowded, and everything. All these things needs to be trained to the machine if it has to be efficient in any road scenario. So you need a lots of machine learning scope is there in this particular applications of computer vision. So this is one of the best, or I don't say best, but it is one of the interesting areas in computer vision. Here you can apply lots of machine learning techniques. Okay, this is also the same as one Google cars they have done on it. Okay, so the another one is your computer vision where it can be applied is your interactive games. Most of the interactive games, like most of the 3D games or robot based games, all of them through Kynet, you take your photographs and you try to interact with your screen or with your TV and so on. So you interact with it and you play the game and so on. So this is one such gaming computer vision where the gaming also the computer vision is being applied. Okay. Now another area is your vision. It is everybody knows about it, the satellite image processing. Now there is actually the wide scope of computer vision because the satellite images are at with the longest distance from the earth, and those cameras needs to be of very high depth cameras. Now, even then, the photos which are captured by them may not be clear. So you need to apply some vision processing techniques to make them clear and try to analyze those images, satellite imaging. So this is one sort of area which is worked by your NASA and ISRO people that does lots of research on this computer vision area applications. Okay. Now, another one is your industrial robots. Everywhere we talk about robots currently, but in India still we have lack of robot processing. But there are many things where the robots are already designed by Japan, China, and US, and Germany also. So these people have designed lots of humanoids, you can say, or human robots, or similarly army-based robots, and so on. Now there are lots of robots already designed. So this is one such area where you need a combination of computer vision with electronics, sensors, right? Now, machinery devices. So that's actually combination of mechanics, electronics, and computer vision. So now these 3 are together makes your mobile robots and so on. So this is one such beautiful area again in computer vision, if you talk about. So where all the people can work, but it is quite costly. The people won't get enough funding for doing such projects. But if you get funding in India as well, there could be lots of good robots designed for multiple purposes in India as well. Okay. Another area of computer vision is your medical image processing, wherein you can detect your cancer, tumor, and so on. There are lots of applications in medical imaging devices, and day to day the machinery is also getting updated. This MRI device or anything, they're also getting updated with the latest technologies to exactly identify what is there in the human brain and what is, or if there is a tumor and what level or what is the stage of that tumor and so on, and continue with that tumor and identify all those problems and everything, right? So that is another area where the computer vision is being applied. So that is medical imaging. And when I talk about basic stages of computer, see, all the applications which I have just discussed, all of them need this block diagram, which I'm showing on the current slide. So I've taken the image. I need to do some pre-processing, like image quality improving or removing the noise or whatever. After I've done the image pre-processing, I do the segmentation, as we have discussed image processing and image analysis, both the stages earlier. Now we have the image processing and image segmentation. Then after segmentation also there could be some unwanted noise. So we do the post-processing. So we got completely image segmented. That means my region of interest is clear for me now once I've done this. Now this region of interest needs to be matched with my data set. So that is actually image understanding, you can say. So image needs two stages, that is feature extraction and feature-based classification. Feature extraction and feature-based classification. Now feature extraction is a place where it depends on application to application, different features are required. Now suppose if I have to detect a car, the features could be different. If I have to detect a rose, the features would be different. If I have to detect a character, the features are different. So based on the type of application, this extraction process of features will be different. So we need to choose the right features for the right application, for different applications. Now once the features are extracted, then you can apply your classification, which is actually the process, one of the process of machine learning technique. Like at the end, you will get the specific application where you are applying. So if I look into the relationships of all of them, you can see here image processing is a part of image analysis, then the morphology, then the machine vision is required, then your computer vision, right? Now this computer vision needs lots of things in real time application. Like we have seen around 7 to 8 number of applications currently, where we need, with the combination of cameras, we need sensor technology, we need image processing, we need graphics if I'm talking about robots, and if I need learning, machine needs to be learned. Now this machine learning should have an intelligence. So you have all these components in computer vision: artificial intelligence, machine learning, graphics, image processing, and sensor technology. All of them together forms our computer vision, perfect computer vision applications. Okay, now what is intelligence? Is making your machine to act like human, think like human, work like human, and so on. Simply the replica of a human. You just want every machine to think like a human. So that is what you need to have a brain. That means you are incorporating the brain to a machine. Now that brain is simply, actually, generally the brain learns, but based on learning, it should have an intelligence as well. So you should have an artificial intelligence enabled machines. Simply you can say the art of creating machines that perform functions that require intelligence when performed by people. So as people think, the machine should think. That is what the main aim of artificial intelligence based machines. Now you can simply say, it can be simply related with this. Human behavior should be like same. System act like human beings. Systems think like human beings. Systems that think rationally like human beings. Think systems that act rationally as human beings. So if I incorporate all these four in our machine, that means your machine is actually incorporating all the intelligence, all the learning, and so on. Now, when I talk about our system should include natural language processing, knowledge should be there, automation should be there, and learning should be there. Automated reasoning, knowledge, natural language processing, and machine learning. All of them are incorporated. So simply in short, if you say machine intelligence is, I have some sensor data, camera data with the sensor data or whatever. I'm sending it through an intelligent program, a machine program, either designed with the using with the MATLAB or is OpenCV, or even with the any type of advanced applications, Python and so on. Now my system will take an action accordingly, whether to move, whether to stop, whether to shout, whether to laugh or whatever, the intelligence will be provided through these are the inputs. You have a software built here. Thinking on the intelligence or a program what you have inbuilt, it will take the respective action. Now ML, artificial intelligence is further need two things, like to provide intelligence. It's a general sense that to provide intelligence, one should have a learning capability. So that means you should have a machine learning capability. Now, once you have a machine learning, so machine learning in the sense that you are going to learn on a particular data set. But even in that, you need a deep learning. That means without deep learning, your accuracy levels will be less. So we need to know the further in depth in deep learning. So it's actually a subset of learning in the deep. So deep learning is a part of machine learning, and it is a subset of intelligence, right? So without these machine learning and deep learning, the machine will not have an intelligence. It is not that capable enough to intelligent, right? So these are the three different terminologies used in current research areas. And if you know machine learning, if you perform in deep feature extraction, then it comes your deep learning. And in my lectures, in today's lecture, I'm not covering the topics of deep learning. I'll just be covering on the topics of machine learning itself. Okay, now machine learning is simply the classify. You have the input image, you have to extract the features, then does some classification on it, and then you decide whether the vehicle is a car or not. Deep is actually, it's a combination of these two, but the features are even more compared to the normal machine learning technique. Suppose in normal machine learning technique, if I am extracting around 1,000 features, in deep learning, I'll get around 10,000 features. So like this, the amount of features I extract from the image or the input is more in comparison to normal machine learning technique. Though that the accuracy is much higher in when we apply deep learning techniques. Okay. Now, this ML techniques are basically categorized into three: supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement. I think in yesterday's lectures, you might have got enough knowledge on supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. Supervised techniques are actually like you have already the labeled data, you know already the classes, you need to just classify them. Like your classification techniques, all the classification and regression techniques comes under supervised approach. Another one is your unsupervised, where we don't have any information about the data set. We simply lie or take the decisions directly from the whatever sample image or features we have extracted. We don't have any prior knowledge. Those comes under your unsupervised technique. So the best example for unsupervised technique is your clustering. So clustering, as you all, I think most of you already know, suppose if I have given this set of samples, I can cluster these samples into only two groups like this shown on this one. And once I decide these two groups, I can further categorize them into these three are actually, if I look into only the red region, it is further can be divided into three regions: red, black, and blue, as I have represented here. Similarly, if I talk about only the second region, this can also be further divided into certain sub-regions. So now we are not going to look into in-depth knowledge information here, but we are going to go, here we are not looking into the, we don't have any clarity, like will there be any 2 regions, or it will be a 6 regions, or it will be 7 regions. So unknown information, like we don't have all the information about it, but we try to identify the relationship based on the values among the other values, the relationship between one intensity with the other intensity, and we try to correlate the relationship. Is it going to be in the same region or in a different region? So we look into the properties of individual samples and we try to find the groups. So those groups are said to be clusters. Another one is your association. Now, association says like it's a rule where you would be discovering the exact rules that will describe the large portion of your data. Suppose, for example, people who buy a product X are relevantly buying a product Y also. So suppose if I'm buying a mobile phone on my through Amazon, simple example, if I'm buying any mobile phone on the Amazon, so it will show me the recommendations like it's a screen guard, it's a cover, and so on. The accessories needed for the mobile phone. So that is your recommendation, right? So it's like an unsupervised. There is no prior knowledge, but based on your current choice, the recommended choice can be preferred for you, right? Current choice of your option, the recommended choices can be recommended for you. So like this, unsupervised learning works through the association rule. It looks into the priority setting. And this is all about the summary of machine learning: supervised, unsupervised. So supervised comes under your classification, regression. Unsupervised comes under your clustering, association, and dimensionality reduction. So this is what I was talking about. All the millions of features are not important for my processing. I need to reduce their gender dimensionality. So only important features can be used for analysis, not all of them. So there are some techniques for feature reduction also. So one of the technique used for is the PCA, old standard techniques. So PCA uses the best and good dimensionality reduction. That is one of the approaches. And reinforcement learning as supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement. And reinforcement learning says it's like it's more general than supervised and unsupervised, and learn from the interaction to achieve the goal. So that means it doesn't have any clarity to take a decision, but whatever is happening at the current scenario in current situation of that device, it the things about the machine is past knowledge. Based on the past knowledge, it tries to identify that this is the thing which is in current my camera, current situation in front of my camera. So what decision it can take, that depends purely on it should be the higher influenced decision. It's not like a simply blind decision to go to the left or go to the right. But if I go to the right, what will happen? If I go to the left, what will happen? It should think. The machine should think, and then accordingly it should take the decision. That is what happens in reinforcement learning. But in simple classification or in simple supervised learning, if a device is at the particular signal, suppose any automated device, if at the particular signal, if it has to move, so according to the supervised knowledge, it will either move to the left or to the right. It will not think about what will happen if I take to the left or what will happen if I take to the right. But if I apply reinforcement learning, it will think about these two scenarios, and it will think about the future, and it will decide action accordingly, which is not applicable in supervised learning. So that is why most of the real-time applications, they try to enforce reinforcement learning in current research applications, unlike your simple supervised and unsupervised approaches. So that's what I say. Here, suppose how machine behaves in general. So when in case of a fire, suppose there are cameras built with a simple programming, and one camera is placed with machine learning with supervised learning, and one machine is built with reinforcement learning. Okay, there are three cameras, and these three cameras are placed in the same room, and in that room there is a light fire. Now what does the first camera does is, it will say you need to take a step-by-step process, general standard programming. You have to go to the left, then open the door, and switch off the fan, and so on. So it will be showing all the step-by-step process. And if I talk about supervised learning, it just says that there is a fire. That means it is going to detect whether there is a fire or not fire. So that means if there is a fire, you will die. If there is no fire, you are not going to die. That is what we have made machine to learn in supervised learning. So it will just say there is a fire, so you're going to die. That's all. But if I use reinforcement learning, since there is a fire, if there is a fire, here there is a scope of chances that you die. So leave the room currently, right? So that is what happens in the reinforcement learning. You give the knowledge with also with the knowledge, what do you have? Learning and the intelligence, right? So that's why reinforcement learning is becoming very popular in current machine learning techniques. Okay, so various, I'll just discuss about 2 or 3 techniques in machine learning. So various ML techniques in current research are In supervised, you have the techniques called decision trees, super naive based classification, support vector machines, random forest, linear regression, ordinary least square, and logistic regression. So there are others also. These are very popular supervised learning techniques. Similarly, in super, I think the time is not much to discuss about in depth of all the methods. So I'll be just discussing about how decision tree works. Now for decision tree, I have a training set and a testing set separate. So machine is more built on training set and it is tested on my test set. So you can observe in the train set, I have the class label also, yes, no, yes, no. That means if I have these attributes, it will be classified into no. If I have this set of attributes, it will be classified into yes. But in test sample, the class is not defined, only the tuples are defined, right? So if this set of pair of attributes come, what will be its class? And if this pair of attributes comes, what will be their class? Like TID 11, TID 12, TID 13, TID 15. Now, if this set of features comes, what will be its class? You need to identify, right? So for that, we first build a trained model, machine learning based model. Now that is, I'm using currently a decision tree, and under machine learning, I'm using a decision tree. Now first I'll build a model. I'll test my model on the test set. So now when I'm building the decision tree, you can see there are three attributes: refund, marital status, and taxable income. So splitting attributes, so I have constructed a tree. How to construct this tree is again a huge lecture we need, but currently I've constructed a tree here, and for your better understanding, I'm showing it here. So if refund is yes or no, if it is no, it is goes checks the marital status. If it is married, it is says the class to be no, and if otherwise, it will check the income tax, and it says further classifies the class as yes or no, right? So this is my constructed tree, and you can ask, do we have only one decision tree? No, not appropriately. You can have multiple decision trees based on the rules what you form on this data set, right? It's not that always same decision tree comes upon. You can have multiple decision trees which are satisfying the conditions of this trained data set. Okay, so you can observe this is you can see in the slide, this is a decision tree, and in the second tree this is a left skewed tree, right skewed tree. This is another decision tree, right? This is what to show that there could exist multiple decision trees for the given problem. Now, one side my trained model has been designed, I need to test it. So I have a test sample as no, married, 80K. What will be the person? Will he cheat or doesn't cheat? So I'll just check out. If the refund is no, so I'll be going to the right path, right-sided path. And then I'll check the marital status. The given statement, it is married. So I'll be going to the right-sided path again. Now, for if it is a refund is no and the status is married, always according to the data set that we have here, always it is satisfying the cheat status as no. So the class is said to be here, the cheat assigned class is no, right? So like this, it assigns the class using the decision tree based model. So this is one of the machine learning techniques. Similarly, you have one more technique called as Bayesian classifier. So I'll just give an example on this also. The same data set I have taken again, yes, no, and so on. And I have one tuple, refund, married, and income. So here the complete process relies on the probabilities. Now I'll just find out the probabilities for each and every sample, like refund if it is yes in the class no, refund if it is yes in the class yes, and so on. So for this individual attribute, I need to find out the values. And then finally, the class has been defined as no, right? So like this, actually the time is not much, so I would have explained this explanation also, why we got 3 by 7, 4 by 7, and so on. So like this, we can use the Naive Bayes classifier also to classify it further. Okay. Now under unsupervised learning, you have again different techniques: k-means, a priori algorithm, principal component analysis, singular value decomposition, and so on. So k-means algorithm everybody knows, like first we decide the initial 3 centers Now these three centers are taken, with these three centers we take the distance between all the values of data set, or you can say an image. Now which are all under the certain threshold, they comes into a particular group. So for example, if you see for K1, these are the relevant groups. So all the green colored lines are coming near to the K1, all the red ones are coming near to the K2, and all the blue ones are coming near to K3. Now again, I find the mean of this particular group and I'll shift my center. Now this process repeats until we get a certain stopping criteria, like number of iterations have finished, or number of similar mean square error between the two iterations is going to be the minimal, right? But in general, we follow this first criteria, like how many number of iterations do we want to work the k-means to work for, right? For that, that is one. Like this, we apply the k-means on any numerical data as well as on the images. Both on them it works. Then some research related publications which my students have done. I'll just talk about one or two applications. Now, one of my undergraduate student has published an article on the topic automating games for self-driving using artificial intelligence. So here they have provided, it's actually on the simulator. They didn't work on the actual vehicle, but they worked on a simulator. Now, through simulator, they have achieved a good accuracy for taking the decisions, automating the car on the video game. So for it, they have used convolution neural networks for taking the features. So they had initially a camera simulator, which has the three cameras, one on the left side, one on the center, and one on the right side. Now, through the left, through the center, and through the right cameras, it is taking the three different images. Now, those three images are used for feature extraction. Now, based on these three images, we send these three images to CNN, convolution neural network. Now, this will extract the features in terms of numerical forms. Now, based on this, you have like that, you have all the, first the machine was trained with all the options, like whenever there is an when to take the left movement, when to take the movement, when to drop the accelerator speed, and when to improve the speed. Like this, there are lots of trained data first design prepared from the simulator. Now, based on that trained data or that collected sampled data, the CNN is learned, and based on that the classification was done, like at every signal how to take its move automatically, and it has to reach to the destination with minimal amount of with minimum time, right? Minimum time it has to reach from source to the destination without having any accident or any misclassification, right? So that was the aim of this project, and they have published an article on the same. So wherein they have applied convolution neural networks with the two different modules, CNN and augmentation, both. So they have, this is one such application which is having computer vision, and we are not giving, here it's not a live car, so we didn't had any sensors. So we simply had the camera vision of that sensor automated system, and then we have taken and see they have done on it is on through CNN, they have classified and they have minimized the automating self-driving system. So this is one such article, and another article was published by another undergraduate student, which is on an artificial intelligent traffic signal control system. So let's talk about directly the application. So I have a camera databases of different signals. Now I need to automatically automate the traffic signals like red, green, and orange based on the density of the traffic. If the density is high, the green light should be provided. That means a high priority should be given to that line. Otherwise, if the density is very less, then there is no need to have a green light. You can have a red light itself. In general, the traffic signal lights, what are currently, in general, they are static. Every certain few seconds, they change the signals. But in order to reduce the congestion at the traffic signals, we can go with this particular related topic called as automating the traffic signal lights. Okay, so for that also one of my students have done some work on this, and they have published an article through using the edge segmentation process. So these are the results for the same. So this, since you can see here, there is no traffic, it's a red signal, red light. And since this is also having a no signal on the top right corner B, this is also a red line. And this is having a certain density, high density. So it is giving the green signal for them. And here also you can see there is a high density, so green signal, and so on with the respective for the other images. So they have done this also on the simulator. And another one publication done by one of my PhD students was on image classification, which is actually, as I told you, there is one topic called content-based image retrieval, right? So in that, she has done a work on taking the features from the images, like all the images, whatever dataset images she has taken the features, and she has constructed a bag of words. I don't know how many of you know the concept of bag of words. So initially, bag of words means for every human, as you know, there will be eyes, two eyes, one nose, and one mouth generally. So you can say for human, there will be a bag of eyes, nose, and mouth. Similarly, if I talk about a car, the bag of car would be a wheels, front wheel, back wheel, and front side of the camera, front side of the car, and back side of the car. Similarly, if I talk about bag of flowers, bag of words for flowers, then there will be a petals, stem, leaf, and so on. So these are the features which will be for flowers, and human will have a different set of features. Car will have a different set of features. Like this, we can have a different set of bag of words for every set of image. So using this bag of words concept, we have published one article on this as well. It is in both a conference paper, and advanced work on the same conference paper has been published on SCI journal as well. So these are the this is the general approach which is followed in that. So you have a different classes: human, flower, and chair. Now we have we have done some pre-processing on it. Once the pre-processing has been done, we have a feature extraction. Now feature extraction we have done with the two things, surf and texture. Now you can replace this with a machine learning technique like CNN or AlexNet, GoogleNet, and so on. There are very deep learning techniques you can apply. That means the process is going to be the same, the entire process. Extract feature, this feature block can be replaced with deep learning techniques so that the accuracy will be much more higher. Okay, but this publication was done on the basic middle level features, you can say surf and texture. Now, once those features are extracted, these features are grabbed into bag of words. Now, complete bag of words features, there are some, for each image, there is one bag of word. So like this, if I have 10,000 images, I have 10,000 bag of words. Now, all these 10,000 bag of words are modeled through support vector machine. It's a machine learning technique. So through this, we have classified the image into whether it is belonging to the category 1, category 2, category 3, and so on. So this is the training phase, the left-sided box, and this right-sided one is the testing phase. So like this, we have got the better accuracy using the middle level features, surf and texture. So in current research, you can further improve the same model with the deep learning features also. So these are the results where it has shown that if the image is from the DB, the surf and texture is giving the better results. And if the image is not from my training set, then it is showing it is not showing the better result. And even when I used our proposed approach, even if the image is not from my training set, the accuracy is much good in comparison to the literature methods, right? So like this, we can apply machine learning techniques in any real-time application of computer vision area, and they can be we can improve the accuracy and intelligence. And I'll just give one small I'll be completing my lecture now. So this is all about the computer vision, how machine learning helps us in computer vision area. And there are certain publications, topmost publications where you can publish your articles is like in conferences. There are top 3 conferences of computer vision: ICCV, CVPR, and ECCV. And similarly, there are some top level publications in the sort of for generals also. So you can go through some of them, and you can, if anybody is interested in this area, they can go through some articles on these 2 publications and in these conferences, and you try to work on it and go with the certain latest applications of machine learning and deep learning you can apply on your day-to-day life, day-to-day image processing techniques. And these are the references. Okay, then this
Thank
is
you.
all about my presentation today. If anybody has any queries, you can ask.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The entire session was very insightful, and
Thank you.
I am very sure that all the participants are quite interested in asking fair number of questions, because they have already started raising hands.
Okay.
So I'll one by one call out their names, and then please all of you, those who are raising hands, please ask questions one by one. You can unmute your mic once I have called your name, and then after your query has been resolved, please mute your mic again. So Sanidhya Singh. Sanidhya?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you for the very insightful session. I really enjoyed each and every part of it. So yes, ma'am, I work in financial reporting sectors, and ever so often I get images of my financial graphs that depict the outcome of my company and how we are performing. So I just wanted to take certain guidance from you as to how to develop a system from which we're seeing those graphs and the images. I can predict the future trend, whether my company is going into the profit or we are expecting some loss in our trends and anything like that. Is there any way to implement it? Something of a breadcrumb or some of the guidance that you can give me as to what topic should I pick on the way in the internet?
So one thing, do you want to you have the data set, you have the trained data, and you are going to have only the result patterns in terms of bar graphs and so on, right?
Yes, so basically we just receive a graph in a form of a PPT image. It's a X and Y graph that just shows us the vision. X-axis is always fixed and Y-axis is just the performance. And on the basis of these images, I just want to predict or set up a system that will tell us about the future trends or anything like that.
You can use it literally, because you should again have if it is a binary classifier, you need to collect all such images first of all, for positive samples and negative samples. I was talking about, if there is a growth in the company, how will be the pattern of your image, and if there is a non-growth, what will be the pattern of the image. But I prefer not to work on these resultant graphs, right? So it will be good if you work on the features data set, what you have, whatever features you have. If you apply machine learning techniques on them directly, the prediction will be much good in comparison to having an approach based only on the resultant graphs. Generally, the graphs are actually the results of your observations. So on the observations, you are not going to observe anything further. Hope you have understood what I want to say.
Yes, ma'am, definitely. Thanks for giving me a direction of, insight.
Yeah, so instead of working on the result graphs, it will be better you work on the features data set, through which the graphs have been built. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Sanidhya, thank you. So anyone else, if you want to ask any questions, please. Okay, I think. Okay, thank you so much, ma'am, for giving this truly insightful talk.
Thank
and
you.
To all my participants over here, we shall meet again at 3 o'clock. Probably you can join 15 minutes before. That would be that would be good for us. So so that we can start the talk on time. So I would request Mr. Gaurav Tripathi to please share the talk of Dr. Vijay Bhaskar Semwal in the chat box over here. And Ma'am, if you would be so kind to kindly share the presentations with us so that if they can be mailed to the participants if you feel convenient to share it.
Yes,
You
sir,
can,
sure. I'll mail my slides to you, to your
yeah.
mail.
Okay,
Okay,
ma'am.
then we can share.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
ma'am. So thank you, everyone. Let us meet at 2:45 today for the next session.